Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. We were in, I wanted to wait for a moment. I do apologize for those who are waiting, but we are here. And my name is Joseph Canty. I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Landon School. And we have one of our parents, Ms. Peters, and Mr. Joby, who's here as our presenter. And thank you all for joining us this evening. And we look forward to just hearing your great feedback. And what we're going to do is we're going to have Ms. Peters introduce Mr. Joby, and then I will actually share with you all the format of the program and the Q&A, and then we'll get to it. Thank you for being here.
Hi, my son is Moses Fishman. He is in Form 3, and I have been joining Mr. Canty's diversity. I think it's a great thing that he's working on. But as we all deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact, one of the things is impact on employment. So it's not only if you have lost your job and you're looking for a job, but it reminds us that we all should be looking at ways to refine our skills or thinking about what we want to do next, or, you know, changing a career path, or just learning something new and bringing that to your team. So I work at Microsoft, and a few years ago, someone smart in the executive office suite made a good decision to acquire a company called LinkedIn. So we call them our sibling company because we didn't do a complete merger, but it has just been delightful in working with my colleague Usman Joby. And so you can get the wealth of information that he's going to provide. I'm going to turn it over to him and let him tell you a little bit about his career path, and then share information with him. But, oh, I think I was supposed to turn it back to you, Mr. Canty, but I just wanted you guys to know, please give him, you know, a Landon a welcome, and thanks so much for joining us.
All right, Mr. Joby. Thank you, Ms. Peters. So what we're going to do, just so you're all aware of just the format here, is Mr. Joby will present for about 20, maybe 30 minutes. Then we will go into a Q&A session. And I would love everyone to just pay attention to the chat, the Zoom webinar chat box on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And then there is a Q&A function in which you can post questions anonymously or as yourself, you choose to do so. And I will actually, once we're done with his presentation, I will give him those questions, and he will respond to those questions during the actual Q&A, and then we'll complete our presentation this evening. If you have any additional questions that you want to share just with the general group, please feel free to also put them in the chat box, but any questions regarding the Q&A session should go in that actual function of the Zoom webinar this evening. Thank you. Without further ado, Mr. Joby.
Perfect. Can you guys hear me all right? Thumbs up?
Yes, we're good to go. Thumbs up.
It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much for giving me the time today. I realize that for a lot of you, I am probably the only obstacle between you guys having a great time tonight and spending time with your family. So I want to make sure that this is a great use of your time. Bit more about me. I started at LinkedIn about 7 years ago. And my background before coming to LinkedIn was a combination of management consulting, brand management, and executive search. So I come in here humbly with lessons that I learned before I got to LinkedIn. And more importantly, I want to talk to you guys about how to build your network and advance your career. If you guys can see my screen, please nod a quick yes. Mr. Canty, I'm looking at you. Perfect. How to best make use of our time today. So we're together, and I want you to think about finding a job or advancing your career the same way you would as if you were going to get married or go out on your first date. Why do I give you the strange analogy? Well, a lot of people think about it completely the inverse way. People normally will ask me, if I want to get a job, how do I get a job? Where do I click? Where do I go? That is not the conversation we're going to have today. We're going to go backwards, okay? The first thing I want to do is basically have a common language for what exactly is LinkedIn. Why should you be on it? What's in it for you? Second, when it comes to getting married, you don't ask someone to get married on the first date. You have to actually present yourself. Presenting yourself on LinkedIn means having a fantastic profile. So I'm going to share with you 4 concrete tips in terms of what makes for a fantastic profile. Third, building your network and using your network. There are great ways to do it. There are not so great ways to do it. I'm going to share both so you can leverage, hopefully, things that I've learned, things that other people have learned the hard way. This conversation would not be great if I didn't tell you, seriously, how do you get a job on this platform? So after building on those key pieces, I'm going to tell you exactly what are the pieces that you can leverage. And then finally, how to learn new skills. We are in times that I've never seen in my lifetime. I've never seen this amount of unemployment. I've never seen this amount of fear. And frankly, there are a lot of opportunities for us to help each other out. And I'm really excited to have this conversation. But if that sounds good, we'll dive in, okay? One more thing to share. There is a chat window. And as Mr. Canty said, I'm going to check to see if everybody's awake and feeling good. And that means that I'm going to try and dive in and actually post some questions throughout this conversation. And the prizes are going to be huge. The prizes are basically going to be a 15-minute consultation. And there are 3 questions I'm going to pepper out. A 15-minute consultation with me, with your profile. So let's get started. Very first thing, what exactly is LinkedIn? Simply put, we're the world's largest professional network. We have millions of members all across the globe, from Stockholm to Gambia, where I'm from, to Japan. Every country that's out there, we have members in. And for a stat, just to give you a sense, we are averaging 3 new members per second. By the time we're done with this conversation, we'll have 8,000 more members on the platform. In the chat, there should be a question that I planted in there. And the question simply is, how many members do we have on LinkedIn? Now, Mr. Canty, for some reason, I can't see the chat anymore. It's been minimized for me. So I'm going to have to rely on you to tell me if we're getting answers in there. I'm going to give it just a count of 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, big reveal. 690 million members. Mr. Canty, did anybody come close to that?
No, we had hundreds of millions, which is, that's kind of like wide open.
We'll give it to that person. You'll remind you who their name is. But
okay, all right, I will. I got you.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. I wanted to level set in terms of what exactly is the platform. So what brings us into work every single day is how do we create economic opportunity for everybody on the platform, every single person. And to do this, we've created something called the economic graph. An economic graph simply is a digital representation of the world's economy. And there's 6 key components of this economy. One is me, you, 690 million friends. These are the people that we know are on the platform who can help you get to where you want to get to, or who you can help also. There are over 50 million companies on the platform. From Microsoft to startups, there is literally no company that you can look for that you cannot find on our platform. Also, key stat to remember, if you're looking to advance your career, 9 out of 10 recruiters in this world are on this platform. So being able to show yourself, being able to find the right people, this is a great place to be able to do that. If you're looking for a job, which only, believe it or not, only 30% of people on LinkedIn are actually actively looking for a job. The remaining 70% are doing great things. They're expanding, building their own career, moving up and doing things. But that 30% who are looking, 140 million times a month, actually, they're applying for jobs, 140 million times. And other things that I'll just highlight here, 90,000 schools. This is going to be important because alumni from high schools, alumni from colleges, grad school, these are going to be people that you guys can leverage really powerfully. And finally, the biggest number you see here, 358 billion times a year, people are enjoying thought leadership. So just want to give you that big context in terms of this is the power of the network. This is the amplification that you can get. And I'm going to tell you, what do people do? to actually leverage this the right way. The very first thing, building a great profile. But before I talk about building a great profile, we have to understand what a profile is and what a profile isn't. So repeat after me. A profile is not a resume, okay? That's the very first thing we have to learn. Thank you, Mr. Canty.
Got it. The profile is not a resume.
Thank you, okay? Why do I say that? One, your profile speaks to everybody. I remember when I was an undergrad, people said, look, you need this iBanking resume over here. You need this consulting resume over there. No, the same profile is seen by everybody. Two, it goes into significantly more detail about what you're good at, what certifications you have. It is real time. This is the first thing people are going to see before they ever see your resume. And by the way, when you create a resume, about exactly 2 seconds later, it is out of date because you've done new things. But believe it or not, this profile, you're going to be constantly updating. You're going to be interacting with others. You're going to be commenting on their stuff. And real time, people are going to be able to see your activity and give you recommendations and endorsements. So what makes for a great profile? This is question number one that I get all the time. A picture. A picture speaks 1,000 words. This is the number one thing people are going to look at after they look at your name. Who are you? Imagine going to a party with 690 million people. Would you ever do this? That's the gray star of death. That's what a lot of people do. Now, mind you, there are legitimate reasons why certain people do not want their picture shown. Completely get it. And there are privacy settings to make sure that only certain people, i.e. people you're connected with, can see your picture. But why add a picture? 9 times more connection requests, 36 times more messages. And I've put up 2 examples here. Natalie Gunn, for example, from Celladot, and Eric Blitzer, who's a Microsoft engineer. Being able to see who you are is critical and helps people put a face to a name in a world that's digital. Second, add your industry. So one of the things we talked about before this conversation is how do you draw people back to you? 300,000 times a week, our members are looking for people simply by industry. If you work in technology, put it down. If you're in construction, put it down, because that helps you get significantly more profile views. Third tip, that elevator pitch. You guys have all heard it, right? If you're in the elevator with a decision maker, a CEO, someone that you want to impress, what would you say in 30 seconds or less? Now, given the fact that 690 million people see this every single day, that elevator pitch is something that should be snappy, that should talk about accomplishments and aspirations. This gentleman that you see is my roommate from business school. He and I worked on his LinkedIn profile for a long time, and I got to admit, he came strong. He came strong. So this is just an example. He was a lawyer who decided to go back to Ghana in 2005. I thought he was crazy. He wasn't a crazy one. He went out, founded his own firm, made a startup, got bought by the 3rd largest law firm in Africa, and here he is now, right? But he had none of this on his profile before. So after talking to him, he included a bit more of his voice, where he's been, what he does, what his accomplishments are. And accomplishments are the key word over here. A lot of people will tell you what they're responsible for. A lot of people will tell you what situations they've been in. None of that matters. The question that somebody who's trying to hire you, the question that somebody who's trying to understand your credibility are trying to answer is, what impact did you make? How did you leave whatever you did better than you found it? And that's the piece. So consider the STAR method. And if you're not familiar with STAR method, it's a method of interviewing and answering interview questions: situation, task, action, result. That result piece is what I want you guys to focus on to help move the needle on your end. 4th tip, tell people what you did. So there are multiple opportunities to now add multimedia, links, videos. And the fact is, a lot of people will just write down their title and they won't write down anything else under it. The number one thing people are going to do on this platform is come check out your profile. If you don't have that, if you're not telling that story, you're missing out on lots of opportunities to connect with more people to build the story you want and to amplify who you are. Simple pieces in terms of getting started. Well, once you've gotten started and you know that once you're out there, people are going to come to you and you've built that, then you need to go out and build this network. 50% of hires come from a personal connection. So this personal connection, it can be our family, it can be friends, these can be coworkers, clients. How do you connect with them? Simply put, make sure that you add them on the platform, okay? Whenever you're in LinkedIn, I have a screenshot, hopefully, that you guys are able to see. We're going to tell you who your connections are. We're going to also recognize people who could be either former colleagues, former managers, people that you are connected with and others around you connected with. Make sure that you curate and add these people. Now, don't add everybody. Add people that you would be comfortable. If I were to introduce Mr. Canty to them for the first time, you would vouch that this is somebody that you would want to actually connect with, or that he should connect with. Secondly, this is a pro tip, and this is a tip that I wish somebody had told me years ago when I started on LinkedIn. When I first started connecting with people, I'd see their name, I'd see the connect button, and if they looked interesting for me to connect with, build my network, I'd hit connect. Popa, right? This person doesn't know you from anything. Or if they know you, they may see if they're connected. Always add a note. And it's simply put, when you click connect, do add a note, and you can add something in there. So for example, I met you today while you were talking about LinkedIn on this conversation. But just giving people a sense of how you met goes a long way in terms of them accepting or not, in terms of building that network and making sure that you're on the right place. In terms of other things that are going to be valuable, so I always think about being additive to people. A lot of people, and we know all these people, will call you only when they need you. My mother, when I was young, taught me a very valuable lesson. Make your friends before you need them. That is the same exact thing that we see working well on LinkedIn. 3 things that can help you make friends before you need them. One is liking and sharing, right? Simply put, liking and sharing really helps boost and help your network, educate them on things. The moment you like, the moment you share, all of your connections can see that. And that's a really simple way to get forward. 2, invest time in building these connections. And 2 things come to mind. And this I'm going to delve in a little bit deeper in because I feel like people of color especially don't leverage this as much as they should. 1 is informational interviews. 2 is asking for referrals. 3rd, groups. We're all part of groups. We're all social beings at the end of the day in real life. Those same groups that exist in real life exist on a platform with 690 million people. So I'm going to tell you how to leverage those groups and what people are doing. But let's start off by talking about secret weapon number 1, informational interviews. So in 2007, I joined an executive search firm. And I learned some very valuable lessons because we were placing executives, C-level executives, presidents of companies. And what I found was people who took the time to mind their network and reach out to their network before they ever got into an interview conversation were significantly better prepared, significantly further ahead of the landscape than people who were not. On your screen, you should see an example of Katie reaching out to Aaron, who's a brand comms director at Runity. And it's a very simple message. Hey, I'm currently exploring careers in communications. You clearly are in it. Do you have 20 minutes to catch up? I've gotten countless number of these from people I went to college with, people who are friends and family, people I went to grad school with. I will always pick them up for the simple reason that I believe that we need to raise people as we've been raised ourselves. I've been very fortunate in my career to have people stop to do this. How I've leveraged it, gain advice about a career path. You may find yourself, or your friends might find themselves in a place now with this pandemic, reevaluating, is what I'm doing every day what I should be doing? And if you don't know what you should be doing, how do you reach out to people who may be doing what you want to do? It's the simplest thing to do. reaching out to others allows you to get smart about an organization, about an industry, what matters, and also allows you to build in your mind the truth. Now, Mr. Canty, I'm going to ask you to type a question in for me, okay? And the question simply is this. What is the number one source of hire at companies? And while he's putting that in the chat window, just to explain that, I worked on the commercial side of our business for a couple of years.
You said hire at companies?
No. What is the number one source of hire? This source of hire at companies. And source of hire is simply something that recruiters describe as, where did this person come from? Did they come from a job board? Did they come from anything else like that? I'm going to talk for a good 10 seconds just to give people a chance. But I got a chance when I joined LinkedIn.
Hold on, you said, I'm sorry, I spelled that wrong.
That's okay. That's okay. Just what is the number one source of hire?
I got you.
Stephanie, are you following with me?
We have one answer.
Yeah, we had an echo. So it just,
okay.
It was just, there we go. Got it.
Okay, cool. Do we have more?
Any more? Yeah, no, there's an answer there.
All right. This brave soul, what did they say?
Referrals.
I love you. I don't know who you are, but I love you. That is exactly it. We didn't even talk about this before we got on board, right? Referrals are the number one source of hire. At most companies, 50% of people who get hired come from referrals. And I'm actually correcting myself, more than 60%, as the slide so clearly says, right? It's wonderful for a couple of reasons. I'll give you a personal story. When I joined LinkedIn in 2012, I must have conducted about 12 informational interviews. Every one of those people literally went to the hiring manager and said, you need to hire this person. And before I got into that interview, I knew what questions were going to get asked. I knew who was going to come in. I knew what they cared about. I was so over-prepared, I had to stop and breathe because I knew every answer to every question that was out there. But the most beautiful thing about that, those 12 people, 7 years later, are people that still help me out in my career and are still people that I've helped out, right? So it's a virtuous cycle. And it's one thing that I see a lot of people not leveraging. But we've made it super easy to actually ask for referrals within the system. And this is just an example of how that can be leveraged, okay? Landon School alumni. Here's my third piece of trivia. And let me explain what the alumni tool is on LinkedIn. The alumni tool on LinkedIn, remember how I said there are 90,000 schools, high schools, colleges, universities on the platform? Well, you see on this screen a screenshot where for any school that's out there, I can tell you how many alumni are on the platform. For any school that's out there, I can tell you where these people live, where they work, what they do, and what they studied. So, third and final trivia question of the night. How many Landon School alumni work at Microsoft? Stephanie, you can't answer this question, by the way. We gotta leave this out to the parents. And as we wait for answers to come in, this is a tool that I've leveraged multiple times, even multiple times a day, where I'll look at my undergrad and say, are there any Berkeley grads that work here? Or are there any Notre Dame grads, for example? My father-in-law went to Notre Dame. Those guys are on another level of connection. The moment you say Notre Dame, you're in the club. They take you to VIP right there, right?
We've got an answer. We got an answer. Is 1,480 alumni from Landon work at Microsoft. That's a lot. That's a lot.
That is a tremendous amount. I wish. You know what? Out of respect, we're going to give it to that person because clearly that person did read the screen and understand what's out there. There's actually one, and his name is Eric Blitzer. And he was actually one of the profile pictures I took early up front. And I should have said this, by the way. You guys are all going to get access to this presentation, so don't feel the need to write tons of notes. I'm going to send this out through Mr. Canty, and you will make sure you get it. But literally, in preparing this morning, I went to Landon School, typed in Microsoft, and there he was. You can literally do this for every single school that's out there to make sure you have a warm connection and warm introduction.
It's a great tool. Thanks for sharing that.
Of course, of course. Bonus extra credit. There are 2.9 million groups on the platform. I put some that represent groups that a lot of us belong to, where it's African American groups like National Black MBA Association that I'm part of, Prospanica, for example, National Asian Bar Association, HBCUs. You name a group, you can find it on the platform. And one of the things that I encourage people to do is if you're a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout and you have affinity to that organization, join their group. There's a lot you can share. There's a lot other people can share, and you gain a lot from interacting with people who already have affinity. And these people are going to be significantly more likely to want to connect and also help you. Now, all this said, some people just don't care about any of all that, right? How do I get a job, right? We told you how to clean up your profile, told you how to leverage your network. Let's get down to business. There are 31 million people every single week looking for a job on this platform. Why? Because we help automate the entire process and make it simple for you. I'm going to walk you through some examples of automation. First one is career interests. This shows up under jobs under LinkedIn. But when you let us know a couple things, one, are you open for opportunities? Not everybody right now wants to tell every single one of their coworkers, guess what, guys, I'm looking for a job. It might just not end up so well, right? We've made it super easy for you to be discreet. There's a button that actually lets recruiters know you're open. And to be exact, recruiters outside of your organization. So your recruiters at your company, at LinkedIn, at Microsoft, or you, Stephanie, wouldn't be able to see that. But everybody else who could potentially hire you, when they do a search, will actually find you. So step one, if you're looking for a job, make sure you turn this on and then put in your career interest. Where do you want to work? How far do you want to work, right? And this helps automate some of that process. Automation number two, we know what you put on your profile, what your experience is, what your interests are, how long you've worked there, your seniority level. We take all this and match it to every one of those jobs that are out there looking for people and connect the two together, okay? This is what makes our platform different. Everywhere else, candidates go out and find jobs. On LinkedIn, jobs go out and find people. And over 50% of job applications on LinkedIn happen exactly like this because we're recommending a job for you on your desktop, on your mobile, even via email, okay? So these are examples of jobs that are being recommended for somebody who's clearly of a design background and an engineering background. If Mr. Canty was looking at this, he'd see something completely different. If Stephanie was looking at it, she'd see completely different. I do too. But this is something that we recommend on a regular basis to check out because our algorithms have done a little bit of work to make sure that your background, we can tell you what's relevant. Now, you might decide, I want to look for something completely different. So when you do searches, you can search by 8 different criteria, keywords, job titles, etc. When you do this, you can actually create search alerts. And again, talking about automation, we don't have a lot of time right now to muck around with stuff that doesn't work. You can save these and have a search alert every time something meets your criteria come up and actually be notified. Why is this important? It's important because when you're getting ready to apply, people who apply within the first 3 days of a job being up are 13% more likely to get a job. That particular job, right? And let's think about this. When I talked about informational interviews, when I talked about referrals, those are easy ways to uncover jobs that haven't been posted. I also was a hiring manager on LinkedIn. The worst thing about being a hiring manager is what? Being a hiring manager. Because that means there's somebody not in that seat, and you need them as of yesterday, right? Stephanie's smiling. She knows, right? So that job that gets posted, it's been hanging out for a couple of weeks. People already know, right? By the time it gets onto a platform online, you better be one of those first people to apply. Or better yet, you better be in that conversation before the job even gets posted. But we'll make it really easy for you. So there's a button called Easy Apply that if a company decides to make it so, click one button, profile sent to them, boom, you're done. You can sit back, wait for the next opportunity, move on to other things. Couple more thoughts. Following companies. It's amazing how much companies put out there. Regardless of where they're in a recession or the market's booming, companies have a hard time finding the right talent. So I've been through at least 3 recessions in my professional career. 2003, when I was coming out of business school, horrible. 2008, horrible. And what happens during that time? Companies get thousands of people applying for one job. 65% of them are not even qualified to entertain that job, but they will, right? So what companies have started doing over time is work on something called employer branding. And what you'll see on the platform, there's 50 million companies, they'll actually tell you what the company is about. They'll actually tell you what it's like to work there. They'll actually tell you who succeeds there and who doesn't. This is all available for you guys to check out as members at all times. So following companies is the very first step. If you're interested or think you might be interested in a company, follow that company. Every single time they post an update, you'll see it. And when you go to their pages, if they've invested in employer branding, you can literally tap this live tab, for example, for Starbucks. And Starbucks has determined that people that are in technology, people that work in IT, for example, are very rare to find. They can learn more about what it's like to work in IT in Starbucks. This is the last section, learning. So one of the things that this pandemic has brought to life more than any other point in time, you cannot move forward with the same skills that brought you here, right? I have 3 kids upstairs. I am getting a master class in parenting right now because there are certain things I didn't learn. Mr. Canty's smiling, Ms. Peter's smiling also. How do we adjust? How do we adjust to this new landscape? Well, a couple of years ago, Stephanie was very kind when she was talking about LinkedIn. We were very fortunate also to acquire another company called Lynda.com. And Lynda.com was a gold standard in its own. Before anybody even thought about acquiring that company, they were teaching people how to code. They were teaching people how to leverage C++, Excel, executive leadership courses. And we thought that this was such a great fit between creating economic opportunity for everybody that we thought we bought them. And we've created now a library of over 15,000 courses. Some of our instructors you've never heard of. For example, the PhD professor who teaches executive leadership at UCLA, he's a rock star in executive leadership. I took that class because I got a job review and people said I lacked executive presence a couple of years ago at LinkedIn. I was ticked. I got in that class, and this man starts the class with Nelson Mandela versus F.W. de Klerk in 1994. Mandela had just gotten out of prison. He was getting abused in this conversation because de Klerk was way better prepared. Mandela, right before the debate ended, as the cameras were rolling, comes up, takes his hand and shakes de Klerk's hand and says, "Thank you for being a great son of Africa." De Klerk said he knew in that moment that he'd lost the race. And that's the beginning of explaining how executive presence happens. There's thousands of courses like this. And Arianna Huffington, Kobe Bryant, the late Kobe, even has a course on meditation. And one of the things I promised Stephanie before this conversation started is everything that I've discussed with you today has to focus on free, right? We're not going to ask you for any money, especially right now during these times. So one of the things that we did is we said, what do people need right now? How do people leverage things that can help them cope? So we took 275 courses that we know are the most impactful to help people do a couple things. How to find a new job, navigate your career, how to cope with stress, because believe it, this is a really stressful time that we live in. And the difference between escalating your voice and not escalating comes back to having different tools to help. How to work remotely, right? Usually I'd be in a jacket and a blazer. I'd be all shaved for you guys. Today's not the day for that, right? Because we've been home for a couple of weeks. So apologies for that. But how do we work remotely, authentically? How do we do it well? And this is the last thing I'll share. If I can get this to actually work, Mr. Canty, I'll be very impressed. Well, there you go.
Fingers crossed. I'm with you.
Oh, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Finding a job during a challenging economic time. This is something that's available to you, all your friends, anybody you know, right? These are 11 hours of content. I started taking a look at these yesterday, actually. First one, recovering from a layoff. This talks about the shame that comes from being laid off. And we know a lot of people being laid off right now. I got laid off twice in 2008 during that horrible time. It took me 7 months to find an opportunity. So those things called informational interviews, those referrals, I got to live them 12 years ago. And I'll never forget how that felt like. but this was fantastic in terms of helping you prepare for a plan. You'll see things in there from finding a job, recession-proofing yourself, digital strategies, even writing a resume, right? And 10 ways to stay motivated, because this is a marathon, not a sprint, in terms of what you're going to be engaged with. So in summary and to wrap, if I can get my presentation back up so you guys can see this, the very thing that I just want to summarize with is at the end of the day, it starts off with a couple of things. And I'm going to give you guys to do homework here, but it's super simple and hopefully not that intrusive. To get the most out of LinkedIn, there are only 4 things you have to remember. 1, check your profile. Is this the person that you want showing up and advocating for you 24/7 in front of 690 million people? If it's not, use some of these tips and leverages that I shared. 2, engage with your network. Make sure you connect with them, add value, ask for help. Informationals and referrals, secret weapons. 3, automate the job search with some of the tools that we mentioned that are already there and available for you to use. And finally, 4, learn new skills. And that's it from a presentation perspective, Mr. Canty.
Thank you so much, Mr. Joby. Great job. Thank you so much. We got a few questions, and I would love to see more questions pop up in the Q&A, folks. Mr. Joby, first question is, are there benefits to being a premium member? I know we said we were not going to talk about anything that was of cost, Ms. Peters, but I do think there is, it's a valid question.
I get this question all the time. There are, right? But here's what I'll tell people. 90% of people I meet on the platform are not doing the basics. They don't have a profile picture. They don't have a summary. They haven't put their job experience in there. They're not leveraging all the free tools that are out there. And I tell this to everybody I meet. If you and I were in the same room right now, make sure you use the free stuff and maximize that. Now, if you are hardcore looking for a career opportunity right now, premium is for you. If you are hardcore looking to do business development, premium is for you, right? But there are things that you can do for free that I would make sure you exhaust first before looking at premium.
Okay, what are some of those things that you would recommend folks do before they actually looked at exploring a premium account?
First, leverage your network, right? Like, why go out and reach out to people cold who you've never met? Leverage the alumni tool, leverage informational interviews, leverage referrals, right? These are all things that people don't think about because the end goal is so easy. And one of the things I fell victim to when I was looking for a job, click, apply. Job, click, apply. It feels good. It feels like you're doing something. But I didn't realize that I was ending up in a stack of 300 resumes for one position. And it's going to get worse given how many people are out there, right? So some of the tips and tricks that I shared, absolutely leverage them. Take the courses. If you are looking to move your career right now, those free courses that are unlocked, they have hours on end of practical tips that experts have put together, either CEOs, hiring managers, recruiters. I would leverage all that stuff and then decide to move on to premium.
Another question we have that popped up in the chat is, what is the best thing about the premium membership that's worth the extra money?
The best thing about the premium membership is worth the extra money. I think it may come back to boosting your network, right? So some people don't have the same networks. Not all networks are born equal. And if we're learning anything from this pandemic, it's demonstrating that there are different underrepresented groups that don't have the same network. We talk about this at LinkedIn all the time. We talk about something called the network gap. And the network gap simply is, if you went to Harvard, you went to Notre Dame, your network is solid. It's on lock. If you've been incarcerated, no, not the same, right? If you didn't finish high school, it's not the same. So one of the things that we've talked about is how do we close that network gap? And one of the things that we do on a regular basis at LinkedIn is we actually reach outside our network and meet with people who've never been, don't have access to our networks, and we open our networks for them, right? Premium can help accelerate some of that, right? So I think that that's the first step in terms of why it's valuable to a lot of people. But I find people having a lot of conversations about premium, assuming that's how LinkedIn makes its money. I can guarantee you it's not, right? I worked on the commercial side of the business. What we do with enterprises powers a lot of what we do. You may see ads for premium, but I would, again, leverage the stuff that you have. Leverage your network. And if you need to boost your network, premium can be of value.
Great point. Thank you for sharing that. Got one more question here. Can you provide any insight on success stories for candidates looking for executive level positions?
Yeah, so success stories. I'd say a couple. I'd say a couple. I can think of one right now, actually. And this is a friend of mine who's going for a really senior internal position. I'll start with internal first. And he reached out to me a couple months ago, sharing confidentially that he was thinking about making a switch. And we talked through a lot of things I talked to you guys about: executive presence. We talked about how to interview. We talked about the STAR method for accomplishments. We talked about building and leveraging people before he stepped into that room. And literally, I was at Whole Foods 2 weeks ago, and he told me that he got the position. And this is a position that his mentor, who brought him in for, had actually tried to get someone hired for 2 years and couldn't get. And here was an internal transfer making that happen. In terms of external, there are so many of them in terms of leveraging. When I worked in executive search, I used to work with C-level execs. So these are people who were chief somethings, right? CEOs, chief marketing officers. What was really interesting to me about that crowd is how much they leveraged their network, right? They knew that they weren't going to get off the street and hit a pie and find a CEO position. The way the game works, you need advocates. And what they are able to do on a regular basis that I think everybody else should really think about is leverage the people who already know, right? For example, Mrs. Peters has been at Microsoft for a while. She knows a lot of people at Microsoft, right? If I were ever going to look at an opportunity in Microsoft, and one, I had earned the right to have the conversation. This is something to not forget also. Earn the right to have the conversation. I find a lot of people sometimes when they come out and approach these conversations, come at it from, I need you to do this for me. What's in it for that person, right? How are you adding value to that person? Those are simple things that I think people tend to forget, but if you don't forget it, you stand out in a wonderful way. Last example I'll leave you with, a young woman reached out to me. She just started LinkedIn about 6 months ago. And she reached out to find out more about what the economic graph does, how we advance the future of work. I have rarely been this impressed by somebody who's 6 months out of college. She did her homework. She went on LinkedIn. She figured out what I was about, what I'd done. She asked some really insightful questions. This is pro tip number 3, Mr. Canty. Insightful, open-ended questions. Too often we get in the conversation. We want to talk about what we want to talk about, but the real value comes from open-ended questions, seeking to learn. And when you ask people a simple question and you're open-ended, you'll be surprised at what people will tell you. People maybe will not be able to tell you, you can get this job, but people sure as heck can tell you, here's how I got here. Here's how I learned. Here's what I wouldn't do again. Here's what I think you should do.
Thank you for sharing that. I've got 2 more questions myself that I want to ask.
Please.
Sometimes I get questions about networks and networking, and people will say, well, what's the difference between this and Facebook? So I'll ask you that question. Yeah, we know it's a more business-focused platform for careers, but what is the difference? And what do you think the value is, and what can really help people separate those relationships?
Yeah. I'll give you a personal example. I love Facebook. I love Facebook for a couple of reasons. I met my wife in 2008 via Facebook. She sent me a message via Facebook. And I said, either this woman is crazy or I'm the luckiest guy alive. I'm actually the luckiest guy alive because 12 years later, we're still together. I found my dog on Facebook, right? And if you look on Facebook, every baby picture known to man that I have is on that platform. This platform is about your career. It's about your professional network. The two generally don't mix. We're having some bleeding between the two right now because we work from home, right? And I think it's important to have a combination between the two. But this is where you go for your professional expertise, your professional credibility. People here don't care about my dog. Frankly, they don't care about my wife, but they do care about what impact I'm going to have and how I'm going to add value to them. And that's probably the simplest way I describe it for people.
Thank you for answering that. Last question I'm going to ask you, and just to kind of wrap things up. And thank you
Sure.
all for hanging in there with us. When you think about someone who is brand new, you talked about helping people expand their network. Someone who's
Yeah.
brand new to this platform,
Yeah.
what are like the top 3 things that a person should be thinking about doing tonight? They get off the phone and they want to say, I'm going to set up an account. What are the top 3 things they should do to make sure that tomorrow morning they can hit the ground running?
Beautiful. So number 1, set up your profile. Remember those tips that I mentioned? Photo, do those things, right? Make sure you actually set up a good profile. And if you're not sure, ask a friend, ask somebody who knows you to actually look at the profile and say, is this reflective of me? Step 1. Step 2, your network, right? So as you basically add yourself to the platform, if you haven't done this before, we can actually recommend bringing in people from your address book. And you can decide who you bring in and who you don't bring in. That's very important. Starting off early, my rule of thumb is if this person was in a room full of 690 million people, would you introduce them to someone else on the platform? If your answer is yes, add that person. If your answer is no, do not dilute your network, right? Because the last thing you want with a professional experience is for me to have somebody who I don't know, non-connected them, Stephanie sees that person and says, okay, Usman was vouch for him, right? Make sure that that's always clear.
Good point.
The last thing in terms of what would be valuable, I would say come at it from a mind of sharing. A lot of people on any platform think about what's in it for me first, right? And I feel that I see a lot more of that online because we can choose to be different people online. People who I've seen be very successful on this platform give ideas, they give thoughts, they give recommendations, they help other people out. And believe it or not, it comes back to you many, many fold. Last example I share, my referral into LinkedIn was actually somebody I worked with in 2007 in London at the corporate executive board. And I reached out on an informational interview, said, hey, what are you up to these days? How are you living? And they started telling me about what it was like to work at LinkedIn. I said, this sounds fantastic. Is there anybody else I can talk to? And he said, you know what, send me your resume. Walk that resume over to the hiring manager. And a week later, I was in front of an interviewer. And a couple of weeks later, there I am inside the company.
Well, that's a success story. Thank you for sharing that. You've talked a lot about relationships today, and we appreciate that. And I think that, to me, is the theme of your message and the point you've made, and that building genuine relationships and that being the focal point and the end game, basically sowing seeds and being positive. What takeaway would you like people to have from this conversation and this evening?
You know what? You're absolutely right. I think relationships are the foundation of trust. I want people to understand that there are still places where trust matters. On this platform especially, it's the number one currency we have. You cannot create economic opportunity for everybody on this platform if they cannot trust that they're safe. Mr. Canty, one thing that I didn't discuss that I think is important also is privacy settings. We hold it to be sacred,
yes.
right? And there's a whole section on privacy that we can talk about even at a future date if you guys want to have me back, where I can tell you guys how we keep people safe on this platform, right? We are different animals. Some people want to be completely out there, some people don't. We've learned over time that keeping people's comfort level in terms of safety and trust valid and very easy to find is huge. And over the last couple of years especially, it's something that I've been proud of in terms of what our efforts are. I think there's always room to grow, but that is, I think, one of the big differentiators for us and this platform.
Thank you. Thank you. So we appreciate it. We would love to have you back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
For you all that have been on the call, thank you for your time and sacrifice evening, but also joining us. And Ms. Peters, thank you for your partnership here. And Mr. Joby, we look forward to speaking with you in the future. Continue to stay safe. And thank you for your partnership again. Have a good evening.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mr. Canty.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Awesome.